Thank you all for coming out. Again, my name is Eric Johnson. I'm the chair-elect of the Colorado Bar Association's Immigration Law Section. For most of my career, when people would say, "What do you do?" and I said immigration law, you'd get the cock of the head and people saying that's a thing. But now we're, with the new administration, immigration's front and center, and we're getting our 15 minutes of fame. I'm going to encourage all y'all to. I really appreciate the passion and the interest. But this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. As the administration goes through rule changes, the rule changing mechanism, possibly changes to the law, I think some of the biggest changes we're going to see are going to be 2-3 years down the road. So it indicated this is going to be a long haul. What are we dealing with? Why are you here? I don't know if anybody grew up in a rough part of this country, but for lack of a better term, I'm going to use the word gang. It's a convenient moniker, but it does absolutely no justice to what people in Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador are dealing with on a daily basis. Gangs in the United States are born of social injustice, of economic injustice, or economic inequalities. Certainly they're bad from a criminal standpoint and a violent standpoint. But the gangs in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras are born of war. They are born of incredibly violent civil wars. The level of violence that these gangs engage in is absolutely mind-boggling. And to an American, even from a rough part of town, almost incomprehensible. I've had clients who would, refuse advances from, these gangs, and really they're parallel governments. We're talking about highly sophisticated criminal organizations that incorporate corrupt politicians, law enforcement at all levels, all the way down to the street players. So we're talking about organizations. I almost don't even like using the word gang. We're talking about incredibly sophisticated criminal and political organizations that in their spheres of influence are the de facto governments. And anybody who does not play ball, anyone who does not go along with what the local government now is doing, while one of my clients was kidnapped, tied down, forced to watch his 8-year-old daughter gang raped, and then forced to watch as she was dismembered piece by piece and the body parts were spread on his front lawn as a warning to others. This is what people in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras are dealing with. And that obviously that's an extreme example, but this is not unusual. So this is why you're here. This is what we're talking about. And when we hear politicians talking about kids with the calves the size of softballs, it's either willfully uninformed or just pathetically uninformed. So today you will be hearing Christina Lynn talking about Asylum 101. So what is asylum? Basically, asylum is a refugee who's in this country. If you're outside of the country, you're deemed a refugee. If you're inside the country, you're applying for asylum. So this is basically a person who has been suffered past persecution or fears future persecution for protected ground. And usually that protected ground is some immutable characteristic. Gender, political opinion, religion, member in a social group, things of that nature. But you'll get into that a little more in more detail. But that's the fundamental of what asylum is. Ashley Harrington is going to talk to you about SIJS, a Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. And in short, this is for minors who have been abandoned, abused by one or both parents. And then we have a process within our state court system by which state court judges can make certain findings, and then they are entitled to a certain legal status within the United States. Katie Glenn then will come in and talk about the state court aspect of SIJS and which state courts, our juvenile courts, our probate courts, what types of judges can make these findings, what are these findings, and walk you through how this is done. If there are questions throughout this, apparently there are baskets in every room, and we ask that you fill out one of the forms and put your questions on these forms and put them in the basket because apparently this is being recorded, and we'll be able to read the questions so that everyone can hear them, and it'll be efficient given the number of people in a number of different rooms. I have to admit, I'm a little overwhelmed. This is a wonderful turnout. We talked a little bit about who you're going to be dealing with, but the sheer numbers, there we go. We see that spike in numbers there when we've got about 60,000 unaccompanied children coming into the country, in 2014, 2016. Now, it seems like forever ago, but now these are the cases that are actually starting. The immigration process is a slow process, and so these are the cases that are actually starting to come ripe now. So the need for manpower is immediate. How do these people end up in Colorado? Well, a child who comes in without a parent or legal guardian will be detained by Border Protection, CBP. They get very upset when you call them Border Patrol, so it's Border Protection. They get transferred to the Refugee Resettlement Office, or ORR, and then they get reunified, if they can, with either a parent who's here or a relative. And then they get issued what is called a notice to appear. You'll hear us call it an NTA. The notice to appear is what starts a removal process. They're being placed into removal proceedings. So they get these NTAs, and you'll notice that of one of our hypotheticals, they all talk about removal proceedings being initiated. Well, that's done with the notice to appear. It'll have a set of allegations on it. You're not a citizen of the United States. You're a citizen, a national of Honduras. You entered the country without, blah, 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 those different allegations, and there'll be a charge. You're deportable because of, whatever reason. Parents who show up with kids go through a very similar process. They just skip the step of the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Again, they're met at the border or caught, and then they can be paroled in. Everyone's probably used to hearing the word parole in a criminal context. When you get out of prison, you're put on parole. In the immigration context, parole is a manner of allowing someone into the country. You can enter with a visa, you can enter unlawfully, or you can get a paroled entry. So these parents who show up with their kids can be paroled at the border, can be paroled into the country, or unfortunately what we've been seeing more and more over the last several years is parents and children being detained in family detention centers throughout the country. Right now, the biggest one in Dilley, Texas. And they sit in these detention centers until they can have what is called credible fear interview. And this is when they're trying to separate out, you don't get asylum for economic reasons. You don't get asylum for a number of different reasons. So they do a credible fear interview to see, has the person actually been persecuted in the past? Do they have a reasonable fear of future persecution? And is it for a protected ground? And what are these immutable characteristics? If they pass that credible fear interview, then they can be paroled out of family detention to a sponsor. Many times these people are already, the sponsors are in Colorado, so that's how the people end up here in Colorado. And they're given their notice to appear, and removal proceedings begin. For unaccompanied children, sorry, the introduction to Immigration Law 101 in 20 minutes is a bit of a challenge. When someone is in removal proceedings, we do try to find, a defense to removal. That can be done defensively in an immigration court, or with asylum, you can file affirmatively. So if someone is not in proceedings and there's suddenly a change in their country or a relative is killed, they can say, holy mackerel, my family is now being targeted, and they can file for asylum affirmatively without being in proceedings. There's one little hybrid circumstance, and this is something y'all will be learning about today, that's the unaccompanied minors. Even though they are in immigration proceedings, for right now, they are allowed to file asylum affirmatively, which means you'll be dealing with an asylum officer outside of the court system. You may have a court appearance or two just to keep a judge informed as to what's going on, but those cases aren't actually litigated in court. Those are going to be litigated outside of court. So there's something for everybody. There's court work and there's non-court work. So something for everybody. You know, something that's really amazing to a lot of people who are just used to the American system, used to the concepts of, you know, constitutional protections. Immigrants do not have any constitutional rights. They have a right to due process, and that is it. And that includes no right to counsel. None. There's no taxpayer paid counsel. There's no government appointed counsel. It's us. You know, it's the immigration law section. It's RMIAN who does the heavy lifting in this area. You know, and there's just simply not enough brain power to handle, you know, the 60,000 cases that are now ripening. You know, this is why it's so exciting to see you guys here. The numbers are stark and startling, and as to us as lawyers who maybe think highly of ourselves, maybe not unexpected. People who have attorneys are 5 times more likely to succeed and not be deported. People who are able to get bond, people who are able to be out, people who are able to actually get access to an attorney, the percentage of those who actually win their claims is astronomically higher than those who try to go through this process, you know, without it. Sometimes it's mind-boggling at the things that you will see done during some of these interviews, during these credible fear interviews. Answers to questions being pre-written and just having people sign it. You know, there's stories of supposedly people giving credible fear interviews to, you know, to a person, and you read it and it says, "Why are you coming here?" And it says, "I'm coming here to work," trying to make them economic instead of, you know, a candidate for asylum. And then you realize that the person they're supposedly interviewing was 2 years old. And they just happened to get sloppy in what they were doing. You know, without somebody there to challenge some of these things and to actually talk to a person and represent the client, they get stuck with whatever somebody who may or may not have an agenda. I'm sure most of the people who are working in Border Protection are fine people who are doing their best, but there's bad apples everywhere, and we've seen those cases. And it's taken a lawyer to unravel that. So y'all's work is incredibly important. So what have you guys gotten yourself into? You know, I'll say first off, insofar, the vast majority of cases are going to be people who are detained or in removal proceedings. RMIAN has a branch of their organization that goes to the facilities. The facility right now, the main in custody facility is the GEO facility in Aurora. There's rumors of one getting built and getting ready to ramp up in Greeley. So the number of people who can be held in custody is getting ready to, well, more than double. But RMIAN goes through and interviews these people and talks to people and identifies people who have viable asylum claims and viable SIJS claims. And then if you agree to take a case, you will be given a mentor. And I will say, you know, y'all's skill set and the immigration bar's skill sets are going to mesh beautifully. Many of you guys know how to fight. Many of you guys know how to litigate. The immigration bar needs that. I love my people in the immigration bar, but a lot of us are social workers with law degrees. You know, having people who can fight and are willing to fight is beautiful. The flip side for you guys is immigration lawyers wear their hearts on their sleeves, and we do this because we are passionate, which means when you get a mentor, it's not going to be someone who blows you off. It's going to be someone who's going to provide you with examples. They're going to give you motions. They're going to give you what you need, sit down with you, talk with you, walk you through this. The immigration bar section, you know, the immigration bar in Colorado, we are it is special. It's a wonderful relationship. It's a bunch of passionate people, and I just want to assure you that you will not be, hung out to dry on this. The mentors within the immigration community in Colorado through RMIAN and through the American Immigration Lawyers Association are just going to be incredibly supportive of you. So do not be afraid. You're not going to be alone on this. So real quick, in 1 minute, I want to throw out a couple acronyms of things that you may hear. DOJ, Department of Justice, oversees EOIR, that's the immigration court. You hear EOIR or EOR, we're talking about the immigration courts. The immigration court under EOIR is not only the immigration courts, but it's also our first level of appeal, the Board of Immigration Appeals. From the Board of Immigration Appeals, then any appeal would go to the 10th Circuit on the limited circumstances that you can appeal a BIA decision. Interestingly, as you're going through all of this, immigration courts in Colorado are bound by the decisions of the Board of Immigration Appeals, unless the 10th Circuit has ruled differently. Then they're bound by the 10th Circuit decisions. So it's a little bit different than maybe other types of law that you're dealing with. The immigration judges are going to lockstep follow what the BIA says. They don't care about the 6th Circuit, the 4th Circuit, the 9th Circuit, especially not the 9th Circuit. Although I wake up every morning wishing I lived in the 9th Circuit, the land of unicorns and honey. So we have the 10th Circuit. Other than that, we have the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. Underneath DHS, we have USCIS, which is Citizenship and Immigration Services. We also underneath there is ICE, which is the enforcement arm, and then as we already talked about, Border Protection. Talking about ICE, they've got ERO, the Enforcement Removal Operations, and then the lawyers for ICE are what you'll hear referred to as OCC, the Office of Chief Counsel. These are the ICE lawyers. So as I wrap up here, as I'm basically out of time, our goal here is to try to get people some level of status. We've got our, little list here. People are coming in undocumented. They're coming in paroled in. They're coming in any number of ways. And if we can get them some type of status, whether that is as an asylee or a special immigrant juvenile status, then they are on a road to legal residency, possibly citizenship. As an aside, going back to law school days, as we, identify flags, there's many other potential options. Your mentors can help you with that. There's other things. There's U visas. There's T visas for victims of trafficking. There's many other things that we're not going to talk about, which are potential options to get somebody into that first step of some level of status and then the ability to remain in the United States. But today we're mainly going to be talking about, asylum and SIJS. That's a ton to absorb, I realize, in 20 minutes. Again, hopefully crank down the anxiety levels. Seriously, we love your passion. We love the fact that you're here. We will match your passion. We will support you, and you'll be able to do work that when you're done with the case and you look at the facts of this case and the things that you've done to help a family or an abused woman or victims of these, shadow government atrocities, you'll be proud of yourself, and we'll help you do that. Thank you.